The Florida Department of Law Enforcement is investigating a police shooting that involves two detectives of the Miami-Dade Police Department that are assigned to illegal dumping units. The preliminary information we do have is that earlier this afternoon in the area west of Chrome, there was an individual who allegedly had his car stolen and he was trying to locate his vehicle, and that's what led him into this area. He then stated that he had some type of confrontation with two males in a black vehicle, and they became aggressive with them, and that's when they fled and he called the police. They immediately put out a bolo for that vehicle that this individual had called in on, and the illegal dumping unit that normally works this area they were nearby, and they stopped and they met nearby here with the alleged victim and got further information to include the vehicle description. So as they continued to canvass the area, that led them over to 192nd Street and Southwest 182nd Avenue. They saw the black vehicle that matched the description with the subjects inside, and they were, of course, activated their emergency equipment within their vehicles. As they approached, they parked their vehicles nearby the subject car, and as the officer were simply trying to get off to be able to make contact with him, that's when the subject armed himself with a firearm, produced a firearm, and that's when shots were fired. The subject was struck. He was pronounced deceased on the scene. None of the officers were injured during the incident. Now, we were able to see, and of course the chopper was also was able to see, the news media chopper was able to see the vehicle from above, how the windshield of this detective was struck or had bullet holes on it, and it only goes to, we can't really tell you more information on that because the vehicles have to get processed and there's legal guidelines and procedures that need to get done, but it only gives us a clear picture of the dangers that were involved in this incident. How we could have had an additional life loss, and it could have been of an officer, and unfortunately we did lose one life here, but we could have been knocking on an officer's family door saying they're not coming back home. So it only goes to show how dangerous this situation did get. Now, we do know that the subject that was deceased is an adult male. We don't have the age as of yet. As in any police involved shootings, we have different layers. We have the state attorney's office here, FDLEs are here, our homicide bureau is here. So we have a lot of different entities that are working, collaborating with the investigation. So it takes a little bit of time to be able to gather specific details, which is why we're not able to provide them at this time.
The second person that was in the suspect vehicle, is that person in custody, and was that person a woman?
They haven't been able to confirm to me if in fact the two individuals, the victim, the alleged victim, the caller, let's say, met or was confronted with during the aggression was at the time of the incident. So we do know that there's one person on the scene, which is the person that's deceased. The other person, we're still trying to be able to determine if in fact who the person is, if we do have them detained. We know we detained one person, to further investigate because they were there on the scene. Didn't be able to talk to them, but they haven't been able to give us specifically what are the connections with everyone that's been detained, if in fact that was the other person that was in the car.
So it's unclear then if that person who was detained was in the car along with the person who was killed?
Well, it's not that well, for us it's not confirmed at this time because they haven't been able to provide us that information as of yet. So we still have to be able for them to confirm to us if in fact that the person they had detained is the person that was in the car when the original aggression occurred.
And it's only two officers that were involved in this exchange of gunfire.
Correct. Two officers were involved and one subject deceased. We did receive confirmation that the two detectives, one is a 24-year veteran, another one is a 25-year veteran, both assigned to the illegal dumping unit.
And they're both okay?
And thankfully so, none of the officers were hurt during the incident.
Both detectives fired their weapons?
We did receive confirmation that at least one fired a weapon. We haven't been able to get confirmation on the second one as of yet because, of course, they still need to speak to them. But and even though this happened just about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it may seem like there's a lot of time that has transpired. But because of all of the legal steps and processing that needs to get done, things tend to move a little slow-paced because of the fact that we can't cut any corners and we need to make sure that we get all the details correct.
As far as the location where this happened, what's the connection? Is this where the suspect lived, or?
We don't have any confirmation if that's where he actually lived. So we do know that that's where they found him, because again, this incident occurred outside on the roadway. So we still have to figure out if, in fact, that the house that's adjacent to it is their actual residence. Do they reside there? Does it belong to somebody else and they reside there? So those are a lot of unclear questions that we still have to be able to do once we're able to process the scene and we move further into the residence.
Are police still searching for anybody else?
At the time, we don't believe we have anybody that we're looking for or anybody that remains at large. They believe that everybody, at least that they need to speak to, is on the scene.
And then I know there was some video from the helicopter that there were women being evacuated with babies. I don't know if you could explain anything about that.
From the home?
Yeah.
Or
We do understand that from the home there was a female, and there were, I don't know how many children, but there were children that came out, and because of the fact that they came out as they heard everything that was the commotion that was happening, of course, to ensure their safety, the officers that were on the scene, the responding officers on the scene, immediately removed them from the area and held them away from everything that's going on for their own safety, and of course for detectives now to find out if in fact they have an involvement, if any.
Did you say initially this was they stole the vehicle, it was an armed robbery?
Initially, according to the caller, who's an alleged victim of a stolen vehicle, is that's what he was looking for, his vehicle, and that's what led him to this area. And once they came over here, that's when he had the confrontation with two individuals in a black vehicle who became aggressive with them and fled, and that's what led him to call the police.
and that black vehicle, that's the black sedan that we also see.
And we believe that the black vehicle is the one that was involved here because of the fact that as the detectives approached, they saw the vehicle that matched that description. And that's when they went to approach to further investigate, and everything ensued.
How far away was that? Did he say his vehicle was stolen? Did he say where his vehicle was stolen from?
I haven't gotten specific details as to where the aggression occurred, where the confrontation occurred as of yet, but we do know that it's in the surrounding area.
And you guys are still in contact with, have you been able to contact that caller? Or,
Our detectives, the detectives involved in the shooting, the illegal dumping detectives, they made contact with this individual who gave them further information to include vehicle description of the subject and so forth, and that's when they began canvassing the area. So they did make contact with him. They do have, they do have his information to be able to, of course, now further interview.
And just one more time, if you want to go ahead and just make that statement of like you could have easily been telling a very different story.
Anytime a police officer gets involved in a shooting, it's a dangerous situation. It's a situation where perhaps that officer may not come back because the officer has to react in fractions of a second. And just by looking at that windshield, it's an eye-opener. It's hair-raising, the fact that knowing that we have one lost life, but when you see that, you understand, or it gives you a great understanding of the dangers that the officers face every single day. And that when we say the officers in the mornings, afternoons, or midnights, when they leave their homes and they kiss their loved ones to go to work, that it may be their last goodbyes. And when we say that, it's not just a cliche. When we see what we saw on that windshield, it's an eye-opener, and it's an awakening that these are the dangers that law enforcement, not only here, but across the world, face.
Would you say the officer was outside of the truck when the suspect started shooting? Or were they
The specifics on that we're not going to be able to have at this moment because, of course, the investigators are going to have to talk to the officers involved. The officers, of course, also have legal rights that are involved, and that's why they have legal representation. So there's a process to that. So we're not going to have those specific details, at least not any time today.
And the victim, was he injured at all? From the
Not that I know of. We haven't received any information that the initial caller received any injuries.